Survivor 44 Week 8. So we are picking up from Matt being the first one voted out in Tribal Council for the jury. So he is the first member on the jury going into the merged tribe, which we are a little bit more merged in this episode compared to like the last episode, for example. It feels a little bit more normal this time around, just a little bit. So the challenge is still a little weird, but it was a much more normal episode, especially with Tribal Council. We're finally merged. I would finally say like we're here. We're finally there. So Matt was the first one on the jury, and he is voted out, and we pick up right away with Frannie being like devastated after that Tribal Council. You think maybe it'll play into her game later. I don't really know if it will. That is something I did bring up last week, that like, okay, that is something that she could use to go into the game further in the game and like use that as like her flame to, you know, start going after people. For the challenge this week, they actually had to split up into pairs. So this is what the challenge is. It's a little weird again. They did this last week, like last season, I believe, where they did an individual challenge, but they did it in a very strange way. So there's only one person winning, so it's not like two people like last week, but they're going to split up into pairs, and there's going to be different rounds on each, you know, challenge in the challenge itself. So there's like 3 or 4 rounds, and the first round you got 2 pairs, you got like 5 or 6 teams of them, and then they're going to continue to dwindle down. So the first round you got 4 pairs winning, so 4 pairs, so one of them will not win. Ultimately, Carolyn and Carson were teamed up, and they did not make it, and it kind of makes sense because Carson was like sick, and Carolyn couldn't even like get past like the first little bit with the net and everything like that to get unraveled. So they were the first ones out, and then it was down to 4, and then it's down to 2 pairs after the next round, and then we go down, because it's 2 pairs, it's 4 people left, meaning it will have a 4-person individual challenge instead of everybody, which that's what makes it a little weird, is it's not going to be a full individual challenge. Everybody competes, but it's kind of like separated and split up a little bit. It's not like a totally just everyone lines up and gets on their pedestal or whatever they're going to do and does the challenge. It's more like earn your way to the individual thing, and so there's like 2 teams that kind of make it, and then it's a battle of 4 at the end. So the 4 that end up making it to the end of the challenge are Kane, Brandon, Danny, and Lauren. And they all sit up there for a while. They have to go lower and lower on the little thing. They have to like hold themselves in this like 2-wall thing and keep their feet on this little sliver of wood. And ultimately, Lauren is the one who ends up winning the individual immunity. So the first one to actually just win one individual immunity during the merge now. So that is who wins. And I think she won because she's like the lightest person up there. It was a bunch of bigger guys that ended up getting on, you know, the end there at the end of the challenge, and she ends up winning, and she is the one safe at Tribal Council. So we're finally going to Tribal Council, and it is going to be a normal Tribal Council for once. Finally, a normal Tribal Council under the merged tribe. I'm glad it's happening finally. There was a big complaint of mine like last week when they split it up again. They had like half the tribe not even participating or anything, and they were just watching. It was basically 2 tribes again. So I'm glad we're together finally. We're finally like all together, all having an impact on the actual vote, and we're going to vote out someone who we think should go. And this is one of those scenarios where an idol ends up getting played in a way that I really, really like. I think it's a really cool and fun Tribal Council. It's fun to see an idol just play in like kind of the way it's just supposed to be played. And it was played pretty well tonight. So there's like 3 big names getting thrown around before Tribal Council. You got Danny, you got Frannie, and you got Brandon. Those are the 3 big names getting thrown around, and the 2 names that are mostly getting thrown around as who's going to go home is Frannie or Brandon. And Frannie is obviously a target because, you know, Matt just went out last week, and now they're just all like, okay, let's just go after Frannie now. And Brandon is just like the other like physical threat, and they're bringing up that like, okay, we could get him out because he's a physical threat, and we just got to come up with who we want to vote out. So it does end up coming down to them, but there is an alliance here between Danny and Frannie, and he has this idea that he has an idol, and he has this idea that he could play his idol for Frannie so that she's safe tonight, and then he's also safe, and then they'll get out the person they want to get out. And that's a pretty typical normal Survivor move. You know, if you're going to play the idol for your ally, or are you going to play the idol for yourself and take that risk of losing your ally? We've seen that scenario play out lots of times. We've seen it play out in bad ways many times, and we've seen it work out a lot too. So it's just a big gamble of, do you really want to do that or not? And I think at the end there was this thing where everyone found out that Danny was going to play his idol for Frannie, or at least a few people found out he was possibly planning on doing that for Frannie. So there was this big frantic thing right before Tribal Council. It's like, maybe we should vote Danny because he might play the idol for Frannie. And that was something they kind of led us into going into Tribal Council, and the name of Brandon was still out there as well. So it was kind of like a toss-up between those three of someone who could go. So ultimately, as they all, they go through Tribal Council and everything like that, and then once we vote, Danny has to make the decision, is he going to play his idol at all even? And ultimately, he stands up, he pulls the idol out, and who is he going to play it for? Himself or Frannie? He plays it for Frannie. So he goes for I'm not going to say myself, I am very confident in the way we're voting tonight, and I'm going to save my ally, Frannie. And we're going to see how it goes. And ultimately, Danny ends up saving Frannie. So Frannie is safe tonight, and she would not have been safe. As Jeff reads the votes, she has the majority of the votes, and Brandon is the other person who ultimately ends up getting voted. So Brandon is the one voted out of this week for Survivor 44, second member of the jury, and it was basically on the account of Frannie getting saved by Danny's idol. So Frannie is safe, Danny is safe, and we'll see where that goes next week. But it was a pretty well played idol. It just worked. It just happened to work out really well. He played it really well. Now, I don't know how it's going to affect his game going into the future, because obviously when you do things like this, you switch things up. You obviously create enemies, you make people mad and whatnot. It's just the way the game is. But for this Tribal Council in particular, it was nice to see an idol get played in a really cool and nice way. And Brandon is the one who has been voted out. And I'm starting to like Danny a little more. There was a little less Carolyn this episode as well. We always see a lot of her, but there is one person that you do see a lot of in Survivor 44, and that is Jam Jam. A lot less focus on Carolyn, but more focus on Jam Jam, like we see a lot in these latest 44 episodes. He just seems to continuously get focus. So I think he could go pretty far. Carolyn might go far as well. I mean, it depends. We'll see what happens. She's a pretty big character in this season, so I mean, I think she could. But for this week, Brandon is gone, second member of the jury. Frannie is safe by Danny's pretty cool move at Tribal Council. Pretty normal, immunity idol move. And it worked out really well for them. So we'll see where it goes. But week 8 was pretty good. It ended on a pretty good Tribal Council, especially if you are a good fan of Danny or Frannie. She didn't do much in this episode, but she did ally herself with Danny, and he did save her. So that worked out ultimately for each of them. They're both safe and they're still in the game. On to week 9 of Survivor 44.